One.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Objective. Today, I have a returning guest, and actually the most popular guest we've ever had on the channel, who's Eitan Fischberger. So, hey, Eitan, how's it going?
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So the last time we had you was, I think, about 3 weeks ago, and we had you on talking about UNRWA. So maybe just for people who haven't watched the previous episode, why don't you just very quickly give us a summary of why were we talking to you about UNRWA? Why are we having you back? What's going on?
Sure. So, to make a very long story short, UNRWA has obviously been on everyone's radar for a few years now. It's this UN agency that has been known to have links to Hamas and to incite violence and terror to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank and elsewhere. And I came across, I think it was the first day of January, a Telegram group of 3,000 UNRWA teachers. For those who aren't aware, Telegram is kind of like an encrypted social media platform where users can be relatively anonymous. And so they have this they have this feeling of invulnerability because they can just kind of say whatever they want. And I stumbled upon them glorifying the October 7th Hamas massacre and Hamas in general and singing the praises of the horrific crimes that we saw on October 7th. I made a thread about it on X, which went semi-viral, and it got picked up by an amazing organization called UN Watch, which everyone should follow and look into if they haven't already. And it's kind of blew up from there. They took a deep dive into the channel, and what was amazing about the channel was that there was actually an Excel sheet that one of the teachers uploaded onto it that had the names, contact information, ID numbers, and UNRWA contract details of 1,800 UNRWA teachers in the Gaza Strip. And so UN Watch was able to use its considerable resources to cross-reference and cross-examine and analyze all the data to make sure that it was accurate. And then they turned it into a report, and they released that report. And then that coincided with a congressional hearing in the US that took place on Tuesday, where they presented the findings. Make a very long story short. Oh, and that coincided, I think, Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, with reports that were coming out in the New York Times and in the Wall Street Journal that maybe 12 members of UNRWA, employees of UNRWA, were participants in the October 7th massacre, and that 10% of all of UNRWA's staff in Gaza, so that's 1,200 people, are members of either Hamas or the Islamic Jihad, which are both terrorist organizations. So, and then a lot of countries started to defund UNRWA. Whether they'll remain defunded remains to be seen. But that's, I think, where we are right now, unless I missed anything major.
No, I think you got it. And I guess what's so remarkable about this is the mainstream media seems to have really picked up on this, I think, around the 20th of this month. But you were along on this story, very early on. I know Razi's very proud about having had you on very early. I think the video with you was probably one of the first on YouTube talking about this. I think the UN Watch report probably came out just a day or two after we had you on. So it was all very early on. And something notable, just thinking back about that interview, I think Razi asked you towards the end, kind of where do you think this is going? And you seemed a bit uncertain that this would lead to much effects. So were you surprised when you saw all these reports about the defunding going on and all that kind of stuff?
Um, I mean, I was surprised in the sense that, I mean, listen, this should have happened years ago, right? This should have happened when the bad shenanigans that UNRWA has been up to was exposed in 2004. I mean, I think I saw a video this week from an incident that took place in 2004 where Hamas or terrorists, I don't know, there's too many terror groups, but they were firing on IDF officers. They just killed 6 IDF officers in maybe it was Jenin or something, one of the cities in the West Bank. And then they hopped into an UNRWA ambulance and they scurried off. And it's like, and everyone acknowledged it. UNRWA acknowledged the incident. Other UN agencies acknowledged the incident. Everyone knew that this was happening since 2004, but like nobody was doing anything about it. So I'm happy that the defunding has started, but it should have happened long ago. So it wasn't surprising in that sense, but it was surprising at the same time. Um, but I mean, I'll try to remain similarly um, cautiously optimistic. I hope this continues. It should continue. I already see inklings from various governments, including the US government, unfortunately, that indicate that they might resume the funding, or UN agencies, other ones like the WHO or other bodies might like supplement the funding deficiencies that UNRWA is experiencing now. That'd be a drastic mistake. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I saw that Philip Lazzarini, who's the kind of head of UNRWA, had said that basically they would go bust by the end of February, right? So something the idea that this is going to be a temporary defunding is quite disappointing because it wouldn't actually take very long for these countries to hold out for basically UNRWA to go bust.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
sorry,
so
what's also, I don't mean to cut you off, but you know what's driving me crazy, and maybe the audience will feel the same way, is that, Ken Roth, the former head of Human Rights Watch, he's bad news. He's always, unjustly maligning Israel and unjustly condemning it and calling it apartheid and all those smears. And him and guys like him keep having this talking point of like, nobody's giving us an alternative suggestion for UNRWA. If UNRWA gets dismantled or defunded, who's gonna take care of the Palestinian refugees? Now, leaving aside the question of whether the Palestinians nowadays should even be considered refugees, I personally don't think so. But let's let's say for the sake of the conversation that they are, Ken Roth and guys like him are saying, well, who's going to take care of the Palestinian refugees? Nobody's offering an alternative. Even a column in the Washington Post from the columnist, I think it was Josh Rogan, yesterday or 2 days ago, said, who's going to take care of the refugees? There's this agency, right, called the UN High Commission for Refugees, which takes care of 70 plus million displaced people all across the world. They have the means, they have the staff, they can take whatever budget UNRWA is not getting, and they can take care of the refugees theoretically. So this idea that like without UNRWA, the entire, system is going to collapse, nobody's going to take care of the Palestinians is bizarre, and it's just not based in reality at all. So I don't mean to cut you off, but I had to make sure that I got that point across.
no, for sure. And the reaction to this has been well revealing in lots of ways, I think. I mean, first of all, from the UN itself, what did you make of Gutierrez's response? Because he basically said, "This is shocking, but please don't stop funding this organization. Basically, no matter what UNRWA does, then they should keep getting funding from Western nations," which is
Yeah.
extraordinary, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and also what I thought was the most revealing and also just bizarre is he kept saying, he has this line that he says, we will hold them accountable. What does that mean? What does that mean? You're the UN. First of all, you let this happen, and you knew this was
Yeah.
happening for 20 years plus, and you still let it happen. And second of all, what means do you have at your disposal to hold them accountable? I don't understand. You can't imprint, like, what are you going to do? And he hasn't laid it out. And I've seen people asking him in press conferences and on the internet and Twitter or whatever, and they said, what are you going to do? How are you going to hold them accountable? And he never responds. He has no answer. He evades because there is no way for him to hold him accountable. So the entire system itself is broken in that sense.
Yeah. And so then beyond the UN, I guess, with the media response, what have you made of that? Because at least in the UK, the response has been um, completely detached, I thought, from the fact of what kind of is coming out. So basically, people saying stuff like, well, look, this is just 12 people, therefore you're punishing the whole population of Gaza, or you're criticizing a whole organization just which employs, well, is it 12 or 13,000 people just
Right.
on the basis of
Just
12.
in Gaza alone, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so first of all, I would like to know from those people that are saying that, what is the acceptable number, right? What is the so okay, so 12 isn't okay, but what about 100? Like, let's say there were 100 UNRWA staff who were because usually when they say that, a lot of those people who are saying, oh, it's just 12 employees, they never really give a clear answer of what number would would warrant in their eyes the defunding of UNRWA. Is it 100? Is it 200? Is it 300? I've never gotten a straight answer. Um, but I mean, to me, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, I'm going to use a very juvenile metaphor or analogy. I don't know the word, but it's if you have a bowl of M&Ms, and there are 1,200 M&Ms, or there's whatever, however many M&Ms in the bowl, and you know that 12 of these M&Ms can kill you if you eat it. Are you going to want to eat from the bowl? Probably not. And so you have this organization that has 12,000 employees in the Gaza Strip alone, 30,000 altogether, if I'm not mistaken. You have 1,200 based on intelligence assessments that 1,200 are involved with Hamas and the PIJ, and those are just the ones that are directly involved, right? And then there's 12 who actively took part in the massacre. I mean, I think it's crazy. As far as the media's response has been the least surprising. The media also has an incentive to gin up controversy and blow things out of proportions, and so it just fits their overall MO. And so I'm not surprised that painting this picture as it's so catastrophic, even though, like I said before, there are other agencies that could theoretically pick up the slack. Um,
Sh- Sure. And I guess in a way they are catastrophizing, but at the same time they're minimizing. They're minimizing the seriousness of what's going on in a way, which is what's so extraordinary. And do you think that's earnest, like an earnest reaction? Because I think I kind of have to wonder whether they're deliberately sticking their head in the sand about it, to be honest. Um, because like what other, if this were an organization which were sort of not, they weren't favorable to, would they really just say, oh, this is just 12 people? Whereas, as you say, the actual number of people who are complicit has to be so much larger. And the Israeli intelligence estimates is that it's about
for
10%.
sure. And also, anyone who has been in the army, which in Israel's most of us, or anyone who has any experience in any intelligence agency, pretty much anywhere in the Western world, will tell you that, you know, the information that Israel put out or that governments will put out about things like this, it's always the information that they're 100% sure about. So when Israel says there's 1,200 UNRWA workers in Gaza who are connected to Hamas or Islamic Jihad, those are the 1,200 that they can say pretty much beyond a shadow of a doubt are connected to Hamas and PIJ. They're all the ones that they're 90% sure about that they probably wouldn't include in the list. They're all the other familial relations. They're the ones who are tangentially connected that they won't name on the list. And so, it's, yeah. And again, as far as whether the media is earnest or not, I'll try not to, um, you know, impugn the motives of everyone in the media. I think that certain outlets, absolutely, they're certain outlets I would say are being earnest, and certain outlets are definitely not, especially the ones who purport to be experts in the field, like guys like I mentioned before, Ken Roth. Ken knows what the UNHCR is. He's been around, he knows what it is. So when he writes op-eds, I think he had an op-ed in, I hope I don't get in trouble for this. I think he had an op-ed in The Guardian. He had an op-ed somewhere in the last week or two where he was talking about this whole controversy. And he said, he didn't mention at all that there are other agencies. And so he's a guy who knows. And so I know that he's not being honest. I know that he's a guy who's really just being malicious at this point. It kind
Sure.
of depends.
Sure. And have you received any blowback for your role in this? I know Razi is kind of viewed you as kind of starting this, I think fairly so in a way. But have you and you posted it initially on Twitter, I think, right? So would
Yeah.
you and Twitter's not famous for being a sort of very calm and reasoned place, right? So what kind of reaction did you get, positive or negative to all this?
So first of all, I mean, I can only imagine what Hillel Neuer from UN Watch is getting this week. Poor guy. But I've gotten the run-of-the-mill death threats and all that stuff. But it just kind of comes with the territory. Anyone who ever wants to talk about issues like UNRWA and tell the truth about it, they'll get the same old Zion Nazi, Jew. Like, I'm not going to say the death threats here on YouTube because they'll probably try to use it to get the video taken down. But
Sure.
yeah, it's fine. You just gotta brush it off.
Yeah, for sure. Um, something else, I guess, and this is a tangential question, so maybe
Sure, go for
so
it.
you can something that I've seen raised a lot in response to this as well, by Guardian columnists primarily, was the case brought against Israel in the ICJ by South Africa. So basically, they were saying, look, we've just found Israel is in court for genocide, which is terrible, and the court ruled that there's a plausible risk of it, and now we're defunding UNRWA. And basically, the suggestion was that Western nations were complicit in genocide in doing this. What's your reaction to people who are kind of making hay out of all that?
I mean, it, it I don't get me started. How much time do we have? 15 minutes? Yeah. So
I mean, go
it's
for it.
I mean, it's obvious, it's ridiculous. I mean, there was an incredible I mean, maybe we can put this in the chat somehow, but there was an incredible op-ed in Newsweek by John Spencer, who I think is the chief of urban warfare at the West Point or some military-oriented think tank. Follow him on Twitter, John Spencer. And he had an amazing op-ed in Newsweek where he was basically saying, I have never seen any country, any military go as far as Israel has to prevent civilian casualties, by among the population of the enemy that it's fighting. It's just, it's so, to accuse Israel of genocide is absolutely disgusting. It's ridiculous. It's malicious. I mean, it's beyond words, honestly. I, I, I mean, I'm not going to start debunking the entire narrative, like,
Yeah.
but it's just it's it leaves me speechless, as you can see. I'm sorry.
Okay. No worries. And something else I guess I wanted to follow up on.
Sure.
So the initial root of this then is the Telegram group. Is the Telegram, it's not something I've looked at directly myself. Is the Telegram group still going? Has it been shut down? Or what's happened with it?
So the Telegram group is still going. It's an open Telegram group, so people can and have kind of entered it and started conversations with the people in the group. Um, and it's honestly, I haven't checked in a few days. Maybe it's closed, maybe it's not. If I were them, I'd close it. Although maybe I wouldn't, because I mean we've all downloaded, me and some other, I mean Hillel for sure, and UN Watch and some other users that I interacted with on X, we've all downloaded the material, so it's all there. So I guess in a way it would kind of give them up if they tried to hide it by closing the group, but it's still there. I haven't found any other Telegram groups like it, but I'll let you know if I do, don't worry, and I'll come back on the show. But something, a point that I emphasized last time I was on, which I'll emphasize again, is that social media, for all the harm that it can cause, and it can cause a lot of harm, it can also be used to our advantage. And so, a guy like me who's not the most tech-oriented person in the world, I just figured one night, oh, I'll go look and see if UNRWA has a Telegram channel. And then I found what I found, and then whatever happened, happened. I mean, so anyone who's listening to this who is enthusiastic about trying to fight for the truth and fight for Western civilization and fight for Israel and for the Jewish people, any of that good stuff, you know, it you can do it. It's really it's accessible. It's not that complicated, and eventually with some practice, you can figure out how to expose things, like I was fortunate enough and lucky enough to find.
Yeah, I guess that was something that I found quite extraordinary about the initial story, and part of what is part of what made me wonder about the media, because although you're a journalist, you're not quite just a random, person. But you basically did a Google search, went onto Telegram, typed it in, right, and found it. So it was there waiting to be found, and we
And
tend to
sorry, by the way, that also, I don't mean to, sorry, I have
go
bad
for it.
ADD, so I lose my train of thought, but it's amazing that nobody had thought of this before, because the Telegram group is years old, and
Mm,
all anyone had to do was just look. And so all
yeah.
these journalists, whenever they're fielding allegations about UNRWA, or any of these investigative journalists who, or any experts who purport to be so well versed in these issues, like all you had to do was just go on Telegram. It's really not that hard, but they never even thought of it, or worse, they thought of it but just decided not to, or worse, they thought of it, they did it, they found the group, and they just didn't care, because an UNRWA group of 3,000 UNRWA employees on Telegram, you know, nobody knew about it, really. I don't know.
Mm.
It seems kind of unlikely to me. So, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just
No,
wanted.
no. I mean, you were basically getting it exactly what I was going to say, because the news media, I think, is thought of and likes to think of itself as being kind of looking for the next scoop, right, or having its finger on the pulse. And
Yeah,
yet that was sitting there, as you say, for years.
yeah.
Um, I don't know how was it just Google Translate basically that you used, or
Chat GPT. And then I
okay,
corroborated it with some Arabic speaking colleagues. But Chat GPT was 95% accurate. So
sure.
the
Um,
paid version.
and and so I guess, kind of like you say, in a sense, the basis for any good journalist is looking for the story. And in some way, they must have either not been looking for it. I mean, the suggestion you're making is it was almost more unsettling that they saw it and didn't think to do anything about it. Uh,
I mean, I really, really hope that that's not the case.
yeah,
It could, again, it could be. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's like it would be an amazingly well kept secret. Especially because there are a lot of journalists who interact with UNRWA on the regular. And so for it to just not have come up ever at all seems.
yeah,
And no,
which
and by the way, and no UNRWA higher ups. So, all the UNRWA employees, these are all teachers in Gaza, but no one from the UNRWA establishment anywhere in, I don't know where is UNRWA based? What, New York, Geneva? I don't know where their headquarters are, but nobody there knew that this group existed. I don't know. To me, it seems, I don't mean to
yeah,
be conspiratorial, but
no, I think it's a reasonable suggestion, because
a quarter of the UNRWA employees
yeah,
in Gaza, at least according to the numbers here, let's assume that all or most of the 3,000 are UNRWA teachers. That's a quarter of, I'm terrible at math, but I think that's a quarter of the employees in Gaza. And this is the
Yeah.
first time I'm actually thinking about that. Headquarters in Amman, Jordan, and Gaza. So yeah, I mean, what, nobody in Jordan, and it just, so anyway, that's an enormous amount of people. So the fact that nobody flagged this is,
Yeah. Well, and as you say, for years, the problems with UNRWA have been coming out, and I guess they're gaining a bit of critical mass at the moment. But
right.
stories about what are being taught to children. Last time you were on, you were talking about things which are in textbooks, right?
Sure.
Praising of martyrs, all this kind of stuff. There's, if the higher ups didn't know about that, it would surely have to be kind of criminal levels of negligence. They would really have to be kind of sat in an office somewhere trying not to find out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean that's why I've been seeing the hashtag trending on all these social media platforms, defund UNRWA, which is great. I love it. Defund UNRWA. But maybe also disband UNRWA, right?
Mm,
Because we're clearly talking about systematic levels of negligence, like you're saying. I mean, how could you trust these people to take care of, millions of quote unquote Palestinian refugees, if they can't even if they can't, you know, if
yeah.
they can't even do their basic level of due diligence and make sure that you don't have terror supporting or terrorists in your midst, in your employ, that to me is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess then in the long-term perspective, I mean, we mentioned this a little bit already, but do you think this is going to lead to kind of a serious reform then, either the dismantling of UNRWA or a serious restructuring or long-term problems for the UN? Anything like
So I
this?
think, listen, there's a chance. There's definitely a chance. We have to continue the pressure. We have to continue having groups like UN Watch, shows like yours, people who are on the internet sounding the alarm. We need to continue lobbying congressmen or MPs or whoever we can to make sure this issue does not escape the headlines, because it is unacceptable that taxpayer dollars from all over the world is going to this organization, which is paying the salaries of terrorists, is unacceptable. And will it whether so should UNRWA be disbanded? Yes, in my opinion, yes, definitely. If it isn't, which would be a mistake, I think that we need to make sure we do everything in our power to continue exposing the truth about this institution. Do not let up, do not break, do not, relent, continue looking, investigating. We have our eyes on them, and we're not going to stop.
Mm. And so then I guess into the end of keeping up the pressure, maybe you don't want to give away any trade secrets or anything, but are you looking into anything further relating to this? Is there anything you're working on?
I'm always looking into it. I have a lot of projects and a lot of commitments, but it's definitely, I have my finger on the pulse. If anyone has any leads that they want to shoot my way, by all means, I'm on Twitter. I think my handle is at Fischberger, Fischberger. Yeah, I mean, so if anyone has any leads that they feel like they can't handle on their own, I'm happy to try to take a crack at it. I would also recommend reaching out to Morgan and the crew of the Ayn Rand Center, because I'm sure they'd be interested in hearing as well. I don't mean to be presumptuous,
No, 100%.
but yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, for sure. Also, as I've now discovered, a very good Twitter feed. I was reading through some of the articles you were retweeting. The one you tweeted, I think, one of your most recent tweets about Vox, actually, about
Oh
the
yeah.
suggest. That was a really interesting article,
Oh,
actually.
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me that this is a totally different issue. I mean, it's a little bit connected, but when the media quotes, NGOs that are very clearly linked to Hamas, and they quote them as like an authoritative source, to me, it's also just unacceptable, and it speaks to a level of, I don't even know what the word is, but it's almost like how the media also routinely quotes the Gaza Health Ministry, which is
Yeah.
Hamas run, and they quoted them as if they're some sort of authoritative source, as if, nobody should scrutinize those numbers at all. They just kind of take it as gospel. To me is crazy.
The
So
health ministry, I think, is one of the most extraordinary examples because there are other, I think, things similar to it, which the media might do, and then they'll get criticized and they'll renege on it. But I've never seen them stop quoting those numbers or
yeah.
accurately kind of explain why what's their rationale for thinking that they're reliable.
Yeah, I mean, remember the on October 17th, there was the hospital that was quote unquote hit by an Israeli airstrike, and supposedly within 25 minutes, the Hamas Health Ministry, under the dead of night and under thousands of tons of rubble, was managed to discern that 500 Palestinians were killed, among them 31 kids, and this many were injured in like 25 minutes. And the media just took it as gospel. Oh yeah, of course, this makes total sense. There's nothing sketchy about the story at all. And then what, 12 hours later, it came out that no, it was actually an errant misfired Islamic Jihad rocket.
Mm,
And I'm pretty sure that the Hamas Health Ministry still counts those 471 supposedly dead. I mean, it was not 471, needless to say, not
yeah.
even close, by orders of magnitude less, and they still count them in their death toll, and the media still parrots that death toll. So we know definitively that it's inaccurate, and they continue to parrot those lies. So
Yeah, I think they also they include or would include the death of soldiers in their total number of deaths, right? So it's always reported as if those are civilian numbers as
yeah,
well.
they don't make a distinction between combatants and non-combatants, which is, you know.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
literally, if you go onto it just says zero. There's zero combatants killed,
yeah,
zero. So
it's extraordinary.
yes, it is.
Um, just since we're in the final few minutes, let's just run through the super chat. So we have
Sure.
$3 from Enric Teller. Thank you, Enric. $1 from Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie. $3 from Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. And then $5 Canadian from Jeff Bannister, who asked, is UNRWA responsible for the school indoctrination curriculum?
I mean, yes, but I would also, I mean, I think that we also need to do better as citizens of our countries to make sure that our governments who are funding UNRWA take the necessary measures to stop it. So I hold us to a high, us meaning the West, I hold us to a higher standard than UNRWA. So wherever you're from, make sure your government stops funding UNRWA.
Yeah, for sure. I guess towards that end, would you recommend people write to politicians? What kind of like direct action do you think people could take that might be worthwhile?
Honestly, it probably depends on where you are, but media, politicians is probably the best avenue. If you're in the US congressional representatives in the UK, I'm not really sure how it works exactly, but your elected officials definitely, I'd say, or now that I'm thinking about it, are the best route.
Mhm. Okie dokie. Well, we've got 2 minutes left, and the reality show is starting after this, so we'll just wrap up. Thank you so much for coming back, Eitan.
Thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure. I hope if the story develops, we can hopefully have you back. I know you're going to be very busy, but maybe we can find some time.
I'd love to. Thanks so
Cool.
much.
All right. Pleasure. Thank you.
All the best.